blessed priests, nuns, and martyrs that sailed right on this very river we're having Mass next to. It is a tremendous history here in Quebec. It's always captivating because it was once so Catholic. And what made these great saints and blesseds and venerables that speckle throughout all of Quebec is, as one very holy nun, Mother Cécile Brière, said, what are all these things that afflict us, she said, if not simply the testing of our love and our faith? How good it is to bear witness to our love. The martyrs witnessed by their blood. We witness by divine fire. And that divine fire is the love of God and the love of our Lord Jesus Christ. And part of that love is to believe all that God has revealed. This is what the Catholic faith is. And what made all these great saints, and the unknown saints, is that they didn't just so-called witness to Christ, but they were identified with Christ. They were one with Him through much suffering. And just think of St. Isaac Jogues. He sailed right on this river, coming into Montreal and Quebec City. So did St. John de Brébeuf and all the North American martyrs. They never came out retired. They never retired to a parish church here as old priests to be buried and fade away. They would never sail back on this river. They would be butchered, burnt alive, poured boiling oil over their bodies, left out overnight to the mosquitoes like St. Isaac Jogues, and tomahawked and fingers chewed off, and finally shed all their blood for our Lord, for the Holy Catholic faith, to convert these wild pagan Indians. So what crowned their life, just like the apostles, was to be identified with Christ, either by blood, martyrdom, or by divine fire, by love. And many saints also died, like Blessed Diana, Mother Catherine Aurelia down in St. Hyacinth. She started the Precious Blood Sisters, who are very powerful, or were, and they were contemplative orders. And also St. Francois de Laval, the first bishop here. These great saints never died martyrs, but they died out of love for God. But they shared in the sufferings of Christ. And this is in every life. We cannot, except for the sake of children who die young and after baptism, we really cannot say we love Christ until we've been bled with Him, sweat with Him, and burned with Him on the cross. And every saint's life, even the life of this Mother Cécile Brière, and Dom Paul de Latte, he was one of the successors to Dom Guéranger in the monastery of Solesmes in France. And you would think these monks would just live a quiet, peaceful life out in the mountains, in their convents, and in their monasteries, and everything would be just springtime and roses and prayer. But far from it. These Solesmes monks had to flee in exile to England. For 15 years they had to go into exile. They were cast out by the Masonic government in France. And also, even Dom de Latte, a great holy abbot, he was just made abbot. And within a couple of years, he was ordered by the Holy Office. And this was under Pope Leo XIII, a good pope. He was ordered to step down because there were false accusations about how he governed the monastery, about his administration of the monastery, and his relations with Mother Cécile. There were false accusations brought against him to Rome. And he himself says this was a tremendous suffering that he went through. He and Mother Cecile. It was an innocent relationship. He was the spiritual father to the nuns, and she would seek spiritual advice from him, but there were false accusations. So this had to be inspected by Rome, and he was demoted, which in this time was a great humiliation. And he himself says, "Let us not heap reproaches on this past year of 1893, because this lasted for about 8 months. He was demoted. It has been what God willed it to be, what he has made it. All is well. I would not change anything. The year 1894 will also be arranged by God. Let everything come from his hand. It is only his tenderness." So this is the spirit of these great saints, that in all suffering we be identified, or as St. Paul would put it more clearly, with Christ I am crucified. I bear his wounds in my body. I bear the mortification of Jesus in my flesh. So we all are suffering now in the state of this church, the Holy Catholic Church, humiliated by her popes, these last 5 popes, humiliated by her bishops, who are ashamed of the true doctrine of the Catholic Church, who no longer preach the true doctrine of the Catholic Church, who compromise, and even our bishops of tradition who shouldn't be compromising now are caving in with concessions to sedevacantism, which Archbishop Lefebvre never wanted in his Society of Pius X. He never wanted his priest to be sedevacantist. And then even worse, just as bad and worse, of course, the modernism. The modernism and the compromise of Vatican II, the new Mass, that sadly our Bishop Frelay, our Superior General, is embracing and has signed on to. And this is a fact, as we all know. So it's a great anguish that we all suffer, seeing our Holy Mother Church so humiliated, and the Catholic faithful, the sheep, so scattered everywhere, and the devils and the wolves just devouring and wreaking havoc in the sheepfold of our Lord Jesus Christ. But we have to remember this suffering, this anguish that all of us are going through is willed by God. And it's our way to be crucified with Christ. It is our way to be identified with him and the Immaculate Heart of Mary when she suffered through the Passion. And she stood through the whole Passion up to the foot of the cross, and she held in her arms the mangled, crucified, scourged, wounded body of Christ the King. And at every Mass, when the Mass comes to the close, you can always see the Virgin Mary at Mass, as it were, holding always that body of our Lord Jesus Christ, the victim, on the altar. And she offered the heart of Jesus with her own heart to the Father. So that is the spirit we must have. That's the spirit of all these great saints and all these martyrs. To be united with Christ crucified. And everyone in some time in their life who are striving to be saint, striving to get to heaven, they're going to suffer. And this is what God's will, to drink the chalice of his, that give us a little sip of his chalice of suffering and bitterness. Let's look at some of the champions of the Vendée, the great soldiers, Catholic soldiers who fought in France against the Masonic Revolution. It's a whole history. I won't go into all of it here, but just I want to bring out 3 things. First, the clergy who signed the oath. These were called the juring priests. These priests said the Latin Mass, but they promised they would not preach against the Masonic covenant and the new principles of the new covenant, which were based on liberty, equality, fraternity, and the rights of man, which had been condemned by the popes, Pius VI and Pius VII. Now, what did the French revolutionaries do from Paris? the head Freemasons decided, since we've been at war for several years with the Vendée, and we can't crush them, and in the prisons, they would pack the prisons, and the Catholic people were dying of disease and infection, because there was no cleanliness, no hygiene, hardly any food. And Archbishop Lefebvre recalls in one of his great sermons the drowning of the great Catholics in Nantes. 6,000 to 7,000 priests drowned, and then hundreds and hundreds of faithful drowned in the Nantes on the pontoon boats. They were drowned and made fun of and mocked. They called it the baptisms. And the Republican marriages, where they would disgracefully tie young men and ladies together and drown them in that position. So, and also the burials, the live burials of so many Catholics in Angers, in Avrier. All these martyrs, and the head minds in Paris, they said, well, since we can't crush these Catholics in the Vendée because they're such fighters, let's send the priests in. And the priests will preach peace. Because, of course, the priest himself symbolizes the peace of Christ the King. So these juring priests were sent in by the very soldiers who before were killing priests and shooting them and drowning them. They were escorted with armies into the cities. And these juring priests would be given the church, and they would try to do the baptisms, try to say the masses, and the Catholic people would not go to their mass. They refused. And these were valid masses, but they said, we cannot go because these priests compromised on the faith, and they signed the oath. And I might add, to sign the doctrinal declaration is worse than what was signed with the French Revolution. Because it accepts Vatican II, the new Mass, new Code, new Profession of Faith, which are the French Revolution in the Church. It's worse, much worse. And we've got the hindsight of the French Revolution and all the martyrs. So that's the first thing. They used the priests as instruments to break the resistance, the Catholic resistance of the Vendée. And that's exactly what Society St. Peter was about in 1988, to break down the real resistance that Archbishop Lefebvre set up to defend the Catholic faith against the compromises and the destruction of Vatican II. So, what do? The devil invented a whole new order of priests, congregation of priests, Society St. Peter, indult Mass priests, who would say the Latin Mass, wear the cassock, but actually be wolves in sheep's clothing. Because they would be used by modernist Rome to try to break down the Catholic resistance of the Society of Passatent in their older days, in their better days, and to lure them into the conciliar church. Just as at the French Revolution in 1792 and 93 and 94, they sent the juring priests in. And the good Catholics, the Vendée Catholics, refused to go. They would rather go with no Mass and pray the Mass on Sunday and the Rosary with their family than go to the Mass of the juring priests. And this is an important lesson for all of us. The second thing to learn from all this is the efforts of the Masonic government to make peace with the Vendée. After they saw the war wasn't going to change their hearts, they were going to die martyrs rather than convert. So they tried to appeal with many promises and many so-called agreements and deals to get the Vendées to lay down their weapons and just accept the new republic, the Masonic government, and abandon their Catholic faith, or at least hide it. And they refused. They could not make agreements with these people. And just like Archbishop Lefebvre, how often he clearly said, we cannot make agreements with modernist Rome. There's no way we can put ourselves under them and let tradition be crushed. So the tactics are the same old tactics. There's nothing new under the sun. And then the last point is a great example of one of the generals, the leading generals of the Vendée. His name was Charette. And Charette, with his troops, he was the man that was last standing. He was the last resistance of the great Catholic Vendée. And even some of the priests who had been strong before sided with compromise, sided with making a phony agreement, which the Masons never kept. So the great Charette, with his troops, the French revolutionaries sent in thousands of troops to find this man, hunt him down like an animal, and finally kill him, dead or alive. They wanted him. And he stood like the Archbishop Lefebvre of our day, no compromise, and he resisted to death. And they literally, some of the flanks were shot to pieces. His soldiers were so good. But eventually, after a long rain in the cold and hunger setting in, his troops eventually got shot off in the skirmishes. And then finally, Charette was captured and arrested. And they captured him, and he was wounded, but they didn't want him dead. They made sure the doctors were there to make sure he wouldn't die. He had some bullet wounds. But because they wanted to make a public spectacle of his death. And finally, Charette, he was taken before the firing squad, and he told the firing squad, he told them, "Don't shoot till I bow my head. Then you can shoot me." He refused blindfold, and he said, he pointed to his heart, and he said, "This is a Catholic heart. This is the heart of a courageous man who dies for the rights of Christ the King and France and the King of France." And he lowered his head, and he was shot, and he slowly fell to his knees, giving his soul to Christ the King. So, when you look at the history of the Vendée, the Cristeros in Mexico, the last Catholics under Soviet communism in Russia, the last Catholics who were killed off in the gulags in Ukraine, and also in China, and the 10,000 Polish soldiers, officers, who were shot through the head in the Katyn forests by the communists. We see all these great Catholic souls, saints, warriors, priests, bishops, martyrs, who didn't win the day. The Cristeros didn't win. The Vendée didn't win. And all throughout the world, all these Catholic resistances who were trying to keep the faith, they didn't win because the Church must live the Good Friday. She must be humiliated. She must be abandoned by her bishops. She must bleed. And she must hang on the cross. And that is the honor of our time. To unite with Christ crucified in the age when he's being crucified and betrayed by his popes and by his bishops and by the world which hates him. So this is our place. And we just fight like Charette did. We just continue like all these great saints of the Catholic resistance and of the great popes. And our guidance is very clear. Just hold the faith and spread it. And grow in the love of God. This is our way to become saints through this terrible crisis of the Church right now, as Our Lady of Fatima and Master foretold. So that is our place, to stand at the foot of the cross, kneel at the foot of the cross with the Immaculate Heart, and to be strong. And the Virgin Mary spoke in Quito, as I say many times, she foretold Archbishop Lefebvre. And it's his line that is the most sound in theology. It is the most sound in prudence. It's the most sound in the right direction to keep the faith, where he would consecrate bishops and ordain priests who don't have jurisdiction, but they survive, they keep the sacrament and the faith alive until we have a Pope who comes back to the faith. So he never swerved to the right by sedevacantism, and he never swerved to the left by false agreements with modernist Rome. He just held the line, and that's what we must do. Charette was like the Archbishop of Febvre of Vendée, and he died fighting. So did Archbishop of Febvre. So, dear faithful, be strong, be close to the Mother of God. Remember the words of St. Paul. Any of us who think we stand, take heed lest we fall. Because any of us can fall. And just think in these past few years how many good families and good Catholic fighters have fallen to sedevacantism, have fallen to just going with the flow, with the agreement of Rome and the acceptance of Vatican II and the new Mass, or the St. Peter position, or the neo-SSPX position. But it's not about skirmishes and fighting and infighting, and it's not what it's about at all. The doctrine of the Church is clear. The 7 sacraments are the only ones that give grace. The traditional sacraments that Christ instituted, not Vatican II sacraments, but what Christ instituted. And the same faith, the same magisterium of the Church is always glorious, always victorious, always conquers the world. And that's what's going to happen again. The Church, like the mystical body of Christ, will be brought to humiliation and death. But she will rise, resurrected. And that, the final great resurrection, of course, will be at the day of judgment, when all the human race will see the bride of Christ, which is all the saints who make up the bride of Christ, the Catholic Church, all of them, with its head and with all the angels, will be escorted into heaven in that last procession. And all the damned will see the glory of the Church, the Catholic Church, one in faith, one in the Holy Sacraments, one under the invisible head Christ and the visible head the Pope. Holy, because all the saints are holy. And we are called, we are meant, and we're supposed to be holy in our life. And continually strive for that, to be conformed with Christ. Catholic, that is, you're going to see saints who are black, yellow, white, of all color, red, of all the 4 main races of the human race. There'll be saints from all of them. And Catholic, which means universal. All over the world, all times, the Catholic Church is the same. So this is where we stand. And the Catholic Church is now reduced to, as Our Lady of La Salette said it would be, just few pockets really keeping the faith. But on the truth, and with no compromise. So this is the Catholic Church, dear faithful, we belong to. And we reject, we don't want to belong to this conciliar church of Vatican II, this invention from the Masonic lodges. We refuse that. And we stand on the shoulders of all the popes and of our great founder, Archbishop of Febvre. So hold his line and deepen with prayer, study, and the practice of all the virtues. Deepen in the love of God as He forms you to make you saints, to be conformed with Christ. If He wants you to shed His blood, your blood, by martyrdom, that may very well come. But if not, it's at least, as this holy nun said of the Benedictine order, let us at least be identified with Christ by divine fire, that is, by the love of Him. O Mary, conceived without sin. O Mary, conceived without sin. O Mary, conceived without sin.
When was born